Hey guys, welcome back to ESS podcast. We're back in the studio. Again, we don't have Mac, but we will be bringing him back in. Eventually, he'll come back to us. Maybe you guys scared him away. But we have a really exciting actress with us today. Her name is Aubrey, and she has done a lot of commercial acting and has worked with some really big brands. So, for those of you out there who are getting into acting, this is kind of this is for you. This is the podcast for you. So, Aubrey, thank you so much for being with us today, and I appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah. We're going to talk a little bit about, how you got into acting, especially commercial acting. It's kind of a different world. And, how you came about it. What did you have to do to get there? Like what schooling did you have to do? Who represents you, that kind of a thing.
Right.
And first off, and since I know you're a big animal lover, anyways, I wanted to ask you, this might be a hard question. We always like to start out with a little bit of a question round to kind of warm up the audience, the room, get some vibes going. So, what is your favorite animal? This is gonna be a hard question for you.
I think my favorite animal is, I guess, just a dog. I feel like I
Okay,
used to have other favorite animals, but I feel like at the end of the day, it's just little pesky dogs.
little dogs, the win
Yeah.
out. And
Yes.
Aubrey is a huge animal lover, period. She and I have been friends for years, so she loves all the animals.
I do. They're all my favorite.
They're all the favorite fans. All right, Aubrey, tell us about how you got into commercial acting. Tell us a little bit like the backstory first, obviously. What I know you wanted to get into acting for a long time. How did you find your way into the commercial side? Because it's different than the feature film side, and
Right.
it looks different from some of the productions. They're usually quick pop-ups. They're funded sometimes a little bit differently. They have different crews. It's just a different vibe sometimes. So, yeah, take it away. Tell us a little bit about the history of how you got started.
Yeah, so I just started doing like stage acting in middle school and high school, and I really enjoyed doing things like that. And I honestly didn't even realize that you could just be like a commercial actor or do things like that and not be famous, like that you could actually earn a living and things like that working as just a working actor. So after college, I did or while I was in college, I actually did a couple of like extra work things on commercials. It was something for NASCAR in Daytona, Florida. And that's when I was kind of like the bug was reignited in me, right? I was like, I really do enjoy this. This is really cool. Like, I didn't realize that you could do this. So when I came back home to Pittsburgh, I was going to do like grad school and I needed an internship to finish out my bachelor's degree. And I just so happened, I must have followed them on Facebook before, but it was Mosser Casting. They're a local casting agency in Pittsburgh, and they were asking for interns. And so I was like, oh, this is perfect. Like, even if nothing, you know, if nothing develops from this, at least I'll have the experience. Because I started even considering maybe being in the industry as like an agent or things like that. I started learning more about that. So anyway, while I was in my internship there, there was like this one role that came across the desk. It was a Netflix commercial, and I fit like the requirements. And so the casting agent, she was like, "Oh, like you should apply for this. Like they're looking for somebody who's um, has a diverse look and all those things." And so I did the audition and I got it, and it was super exciting. And it was, yeah, I was like, wow, this is crazy. Like, this is what I would love to do. So I just continued on doing things like that. So I guess the main thing to say was the casting agency kind of got me my start. I feel like I talked a lot, so I wanted to give you a break there if you had any questions about that.
No, I mean that's fantastic because a lot of times it's like, where do I get started? Do I find an agent? Do we, go with the casting agencies? Do you find an individual headhunter type person? And
Yeah.
personally, in order to get into acting and to do acting, you have to have like a tough skin and like really love like doing the auditioning or going to audition houses where you do the recordings and stuff professionally and do the slates and all that. It's it takes a very very dedicated hardcore person to do that, And for me, I don't feel like that's my cup of tea, so I'm really glad that that was your aha moment, and that's when you were like, "Oh my gosh, I love this. Like, this is what I love to do." So,
Yeah.
that's really that's special. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, so I think so just like you were saying, yeah, I think there's many different ways that you can get into acting or you can book a job and things like that, but I think the most important thing is definitely making sure that they're like legitimate. That was one of the things that I did encounter when I was like in high school. There were like places, and I won't name them because I don't know if you want them to be named, but there are certain groups that will kind of like poach you, like, and a lot of times they'll do these big advertisements at malls and things like that,
Yeah,
and a lot of them want you to pay a lot of money, and they say that you have to pay to do these auditions or their classes and things like that, and those just aren't, those aren't a great way to get into it. I think that sometimes you can book things through them, but I think more often than not it's just a money making scheme. So just focusing on those places that are they're SAG or that they're just well established. I think that the internet has really helped us in legitimizing certain things where previous, like Google reviews and all these reviews and TikToks and things like that weren't a thing. So it was kind of hard to tell what was legitimate and what wasn't unless you knew somebody in the industry or they were SAG. And now I just think it's a little bit easier to do your research and get feedback from other people who've used services. So casting agents in your area, and then just like I said, like SAG, I don't know, is it SAG backed?
exactly.
SAG, yeah, like
Oh, yeah, for
agencies.
yes, yeah, yeah, yeah. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that actually is a really good point. And you gave us a little bit of like words of wisdom as far as somebody who's looking at what is the safe ones to get into. And so you're suggesting obviously SAG, so union ones, because you're going to be those ones tend to be a much safer bet to get into, and they're going to
Right.
be have those extra levels of protection because SAG has a whole different their union, so they're going to have a lot of different just to do a film or commercial, anything with them, everybody has to jump through a whole heck of a lot of hoops. So you
Yeah.
guys are guaranteed to get higher pay. You're going to get, better hours for the most part, protected, things like that. So yeah, it's definitely a smart idea to go with SAG. And kind of bouncing off of that, is there anything else that you would tell people that would be a good idea to watch out for? Things that like words of wisdom, somebody who's
Mhm.
getting into acting for the first time if they want to go into commercial acting.
So I would say as much that you can do on your own is what I think I would do. And especially now, I know the world is changing to doing more of your own content. And I know that that's been some words of wisdom that casting directors and agents have been looking for is if you're making your own, even so, I ended up going through the UCLA's acting program. And a lot of that is what they were telling people, like some of like the bigger casting agencies, is they're like picking people up from their own content that they're making at home, because you can make it almost as good as, like a low budget film just from your phone. So making your own content, I think, is really important, as like kind of like a just like a stepping stone, but also just like anything, there's 48-hour film projects, certain things that are pop-ups in cities, and I think partaking in things like that, just low budget things, a lot of colleges will do, they have to do student films, and those are usually not paid, sometimes they are a little bit paid, and those are really great to do. Just know that you're probably going to do a lot of things that are unpaid in the beginning, but as long as it's a good quality film, it's really great to put on your resume, and it's really great to get the experience, and it also just helps you have a portion of a reel. And again, those are just like great stepping stones. You can also, I think, reach out to local photographers. I wouldn't necessarily recommend going out and getting a professional headshot, like spending hundreds and hundreds of dollars on that if you don't have any credits at all. I think that once you start getting some credits under your belt, or you're doing more and you're like, okay, I'm really ready to submit myself to agents and things like that, then I think you can start, investing in headshots. But as long as you have a really good digital picture, that's really all you need, because sometimes your agents are going to want you to go with a certain headshot person anyway. But the other thing I was going to say, if you do find a photographer who's reliable, like who works in the industry, sometimes they can be kind of a good way into the industry as well. They can kind of give you some pointers, they can kind of be a referral for you, and that can be helpful as well.
Oops, I definitely agree with you on that one. I was muted. But yeah, starting out, don't spend a lot of money. I feel like that's the same thing when you're getting into modeling, because I've got a couple people that are trying to get into modeling and helping them out with that. But it's the same thing. Like, don't spend a ton of money on the package, or don't ever go with an agency that is promising you something but you have to pay. Never do that. You want to
Right.
go when it comes into the casting world. You definitely want to work with the SAG agencies or the AFTRA franchised ones. Those are the ones that you're going to be getting better jobs and gigs with as well. And you will don't give away too much of your free self. You definitely can volunteer and get some good, you know, pass into the industry, but don't do it for too long, because people
Right.
have like films, they do have budgets. So if they can even just pay you for food or something like that, or pay you $50. But yeah, I agree. Like, just getting some experience. Do you feel like, Aubrey, your like the education helped you with the film side?
So I once I started doing, and I think I did take like one or two acting classes in that time frame. Um, I know I did something in college too that was, but it wasn't as like on the camera. So once I really started doing these commercials, some of the, and this is what's different too about commercials, sometimes you really don't need any acting experience necessarily. They're really just looking for your look and you like interacting with people and things like that, or a product. And so there are other commercials though that do want that like strong acting background because there is more dialogue and things like that. So once I was kind of getting into that realm and I did get an agent, I did start taking more classes, and it really did help. It helps you unlock different areas of what you need to bring. It's also just helpful in staging. There's all kinds of classes. There's more like theater based where you're just working on like emotional connections, things like that. And then there's actual acting for the camera. And those are two very different worlds. And a lot of like the acting for the camera is just a lot of body movement, even like your little facial movements, things like that. And just getting comfortable with being in front of the camera because it can be very, very intimidating stepping in front of a camera and there being like three
Yeah.
people watching you talk and the lights blaring in your eyes. So these just
Yeah.
are, yeah, great classes to kind of help you get used to doing that. So yeah, I would say that those all very much so helped me and I would
Yeah.
recommend that.
Because you're the actor, you're the one who's spotlighting, like, you're the one, the attention's on you. You're the one who has to set the vibe. And
Right.
so if you don't know how to set that vibe and create that brand's vibe that they want to see, that's gonna be a problem. So I love what you said. You do need to be comfortable on camera. You do need to have that, presence to be able to play off the message that they're trying to get across to you, or you're trying to get across to your audience, which is the camera at the time. So
Yeah.
yeah.
But one thing I just want to say is don't let not having an agent discourage you, and don't think that having an agent is your end all be all. I booked those like Oreo, Netflix, all those before I even had an agent. And so the ability's there. You just have to have the right connections and have the right training and things like that. But yeah, I know a lot of actors will get frustrated and they think that they'll get discouraged if they don't have an agent. But it's just not super necessary in the beginning stage.
How did you get the bigger gigs without having an agent?
I think for me, those commercials were just looking for a look. And especially coming out of Pittsburgh, we really focus on being ethnically diverse or ethnically ambiguous. That's what those two roles were calling for. And I just think that having worked at the casting agency and then also having a nice background in acting, but then just, kind of having the look that they were looking for, helped me book those. So it all just, the stars aligned. But it was definitely one of those things where, again, I think it was a lot of everything coming together to make it happen.
Yeah, and I mean, you're a good actor too, so
Oh, thank you.
That works as well. So what are some of your projects that you're working on right now? I know you do user generated content. Is there anything else that you guys have that you have kind of going in the works at all?
So I actually just had a meeting with my agents because we just kind of regrouped. A lot of things, which if you follow the world, a lot of things have changed in the last couple of years. There's been a lot of strikes, a lot of regrouping. And so I kind of lost my momentum, I guess, in the sense where I felt like I was doing a lot of the classes. I had just come out of UCLA. I was like ready to hit the ground running. And then we had like all the strikes happen. And also, that was just right after COVID. And so that was kind of things still weren't necessarily full force yet. So basically, what I'm doing is I'm regrouping in the sense where I'm trying to focus my time on less of just doing a lot of auditions to things that aren't really going to help my career. And I'm only focusing on commercial auditions and things like that that are going to put my career in the next level. So those are just like a, hit or miss kind of thing. And then really just focusing on the user generated content, the at home stuff, kind of working on my own brand. And again, that was like a tip that UCLA really recommended doing, is like just doing your own thing. And then we have some other little projects in the works, but we're just waiting
Yeah.
for those to take off.
We're waiting for those to take off. Fingers crossed those are coming along.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. I'm so excited for you. And I guess I didn't know all the things that you had, like all the fun things that you had done. So like this kind of cool for me too, because like, oh wow, she did all those big things. That's pretty fantastic. So where can people find you to work with you? And I'm gonna pop up your website.
So I'm focusing a lot on that UGC. So I have my Aloma Explorers, which I don't know is super easy. So it might just be easier to find me on Instagram under Aloma Explorers. And then also, I do have an agent. So anything that is acting related has to go through my agency, and that's Doherty Pittsburgh. So you can just reach out to them if it's a booking. But if it's anything UGC, you can just reach out to me. And that's me.
That's awesome. Super cute.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Aubrey. I appreciate you sharing that because commercial acting is different than like doing an acting in feature films and things like that. And it is a different world. And so a lot of people, I think, when they get into acting, they think films, but they don't realize there's also the commercial side too. And that can be,
Yeah.
a really great way to get some experience right off the bat.
Especially depending on like your whatever area you're in, can actually be like Pennsylvania or like Pittsburgh area. That's like their bread and butter is commercials. They do a lot of things, like you can even do commercials that aren't necessarily on TV. There's like, which aren't really considered commercials, but it's more like internal work. So like there are big brands like UPMC or like any other of those large corporations, American Eagle, they'll hire you to come in and do their internal videos. And that's also like a great way to get into the industry. And it's also a great way to make extra money. Um, some of them you probably can't live off of if that's strictly what you're doing, but it's a great like side income for sure.
Absolutely. I think we were talking about that earlier too, where I was talking with Bing about it, and he's been a producer in the industry for a while. If you guys haven't seen the episode with Bing on it, you'll definitely want to go back and check with the producer. And he, like, he was talking about how everybody has a side gig or at one point has had a side gig. And I was like, especially with the way the industry has changed, all the strikes, everything, you've had to diversify completely and do multiple different things. And if you have a side job, there's nothing wrong with that. Most everybody in the film industry has had something to pay the bills or keep things going because everything's gig based. You may have landed a really good job for 6 months, 9 months, a year, and then after that you're going to be looking for money, looking for the money again. So
Right.
yeah.
Can I ask you a question? I wonder, what
Yeah.
is your opinion right now? Because actually, my agents asked me this, and they asked if my long-term goal was to still move out to LA. In previous to, like, I don't know, maybe 2021, I did. Like, that was obviously I was gonna go do the UCLA program in LA, and then, COVID. So, do you think that LA is still like a necessary market? I know that Atlanta is, a lot of my like actor friends from Pittsburgh opted out of LA and they're down in Atlanta and they're doing a
That's
lot.
yeah, that's actually what I was gonna suggest. I was like, well, you can still get opportunities in LA. I'm not gonna diss that. There's always gonna be opportunities there, Vancouver as well. But if you want to not go to LA and have the prices and stuff, and they just had a ton of fires, it's a whole different world out there. There's a lot kind of dying, a lot coming back in different ways. Things are morphing. I would highly suggest most places are starting to move major focus towards Atlanta, even studios, just because the taxes are so much cheaper and it's just got a better infrastructure. It's huge down there, and it's got everything. I mean, it's basically the East Coast Hollywood. I don't think a lot of people realize that, but I would suggest Georgia probably way more than LA. Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Cool.
Not the prices and all that other stuff as well. And you won't have to worry about like fires and earthquakes. So
Right.
but it is beautiful out there. LA is gorgeous, and you still run into opportunities way more saturated out there because you're we're working off of millions because everybody thinks Hollywood, everybody thinks acting. They want to go to LA, but you're gonna be in going to so many different. Oh my gosh! I mean, the saturation is just huge. And the industry is so much different. Studios are different, things like that. The requirements are different. So I would suggest Atlanta's just a really great place to go and get some great opportunities. They're just as
Yeah.
good. And the studios have major holdings down there. So you're you're basically working smarter, not harder on that side.
I think there's a huge difference if you have gone, like, if you're coming out of NYU or CMU's acting program. I get those situations moving directly to like a big town like Atlanta or LA. But yeah, for just anybody who's doing acting as like that wasn't you weren't trained as an actor. It's just I feel like it would be really hard to make it, just like you said. It's just so oversaturated. um
And there's some great actors out there. Like there's a ton of great talent and actors, but
yeah.
like you said, it's very saturated. And
Yeah.
I saw lines for, either readings or classes and stuff, and you see actors everywhere out there. Um, so I don't know. I just, you can get jobs, sure. You need to be hitting the ground a lot harder. But Atlanta, I feel like, is a really great opportunity for those who would want to get into the industry and it not be as saturated and have more opportunities faster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Cool. Well, thank you so much, Aubrey, for your time. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with the Hollywood fam, the industry, people that are looking to get into the industry? Anything else before we close for the day?
I think my closing piece would just be to, I hate to say protect your energy, but you just have to be able to, the industry can be a really great place, but I think that um a lot of actors, we have this like emotional connection to things, right? Like that's what makes you a good actor. And so I think that we may sometimes more lean empathetic or things like that. And I think it's easy for certain people to get taken advantage of in the industry or to not feel like you're being heard on certain instances. And I just want to say, like, it'll ruin the industry for you if you let that happen. And so I think it's not being a diva in quotes, like if you're just standing up for yourself. So make sure you're standing up for yourself. You can still be grateful for opportunities that are given to you and circumstances, but just make sure that you're protecting your peace in the industry. That's it.
I absolutely love that. Thank you. That's perfect. Got to protect yourself on many ways.
Yeah.
Yeah. You gotta be your own advocate in life, but
Right.
especially in this industry.
Yes.
So yeah, I definitely agree with you on that. Great words of wisdom, and thank you so much, Aubrey, for taking the time and telling us all about this really great experiences that you've had and things that you've learned for those who are interested in getting into it as well. So
Yeah,
thank you
thank you
guys.
again.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we will see you the next time. And maybe Mac will be back with us. He's moving. That's why we don't have him, which is totally fine. We'll just get on him for the next time. But until next time, guys, we'll see you later.